Tonight is part 4 of a series that we've been in titled Counterfeit. Someone say Counterfeit. Now, it's like I said, tonight is part 4. It's actually the last part of this series, okay? And so we're ending this series tonight, which it's a little sad, but it's also, I'm really excited to get into what we're going to talk about tonight. We cannot end this series without talking about what we're going to talk about tonight. And so we got a great series coming up next week. I'm excited about that one. But we have to finish what we started, and so we're going to get into this. You guys ready for it? Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna try time travel for just a second. Okay, not really, but just like in our minds for a second. Okay, how many of you are in high school? Raise your hand. If you're in high school, okay. If you're in high school, I want you to think back to the night before you started high school. Okay. If you're in middle school, where are you at? Middle school. Okay. I want you to think about the night before you started middle school, okay? And you may not be able to remember, I don't know, but just bear with me for a second. To the best of your ability, try to remember the night before. Now, I don't know how exactly you were feeling, but chances are, okay, chances are you were about 10% excited and 90% terrified. Okay? You were about 10% excited and 90% terrified. Come on. But looking back now, you're probably like, what the heck? Like it wasn't even that bad, right? In the moment, it may have seemed like something that was really scary, but now you're like, it's really not that. I mean, I do it every day. It really wasn't that bad. You know, I remember my first day of school in Elk City. If you don't know, I did not grow up my whole life in Elk City, okay? I was born and raised in Northern California and then moved over to Elk City when I was 14 years old. Imagine moving halfway across the United States when you're 14, okay? A wreck, all right? I absolutely hated every bit of it. I did not want to move to Oklahoma, okay? I was not happy about it, okay? And especially not only that, but I was going to be starting my 8th grade year here in Elk City. I had no friends. I didn't know anybody. Right? I was starting a new school. Already there were so many things going on in my life that were already changing. This was just another thing. I was terrified. I didn't know what to expect. I really wasn't sure what to think. And so the past few, we would call those moments that I had and the moments that you've had turning points. Someone say turning point. And we've all experienced turning points. You know, we've been talking about the past few weeks about things that grow our faith. Things that take our faith from something that is counterfeit or fake and pretty close to the real thing to something that's actually real, authentic, and our own. We've been talking about how our faith can shift from being an imitation of someone else's to a faith that we own personally. And so maybe more than anything else, turning points in life do just that. Someone say turning points. The title for tonight's message, if you're taking notes, you can write this on the top of your phone or the piece of paper or your notebook or whatever. But the title for tonight's message is this: He's in the middle. He's in the middle. Now, chances are you've had a few turning points in your life already. These are moments that turn our lives around and set us in a direction that we were not anticipating on going. This thing happened, and now I'm like, what do I do? Where do I go from here? And sometimes they can be positive things, or even, you could say, neutral things, such as you got a part-time job after school, or you are now starting to play on the varsity team, or your mom or dad got remarried, or you got into a new relationship. These things could be good or just simply neutral. Not necessarily bad, but they're just kind of neutral. But other times, these turning points can be more negative. And I think these are the turning points that we remember the most and affect us the most, such as my best friend moved to another state, or my dad lost his job and then we lost our house, or we had been dating for 2 years and then they broke up with me. My aunt has cancer. My mom left us and my dad wasn't sure what to do. I tore my ACL the first game of the season. Or my ex-boyfriend started dating my best friend. Uh-oh. Okay? It's the best friend's fault. Or maybe for you, maybe you're like, some of my closest friends are no longer my friends anymore. Maybe we could go a step further. Maybe you've lost someone that you loved. These are just examples of some turning points that you may have experienced in your life. But tonight I want to spend some time talking about these sort of turning points, the more negative ones. Right? These turning points are important to talk about because turning points are often difficult times that challenge us and make life hard. But what do they do to our faith? And this is why we have to talk about it, because turning points do one of two things to our faith. They either grow our faith and build our faith, or they completely destroy it. One of those two things. When you face a turning point in your life, it's going to affect your faith. I've seen it go both ways. These circumstances can be described as nothing else other than turning points. I believe that's really the best way to describe these moments. They are defining moments, times when it seems like God is far away, but he's actually a lot closer than we may have thought. And when you get to the other side of these turning points, you can look back and say that, wow, God is no longer just somebody that I hear in church, but he's actually real. He's actually close to me. I actually have a relationship with him. And when people encounter these sorts of circumstances, suddenly things tend to get really, really personal. Now, we've all heard the metaphor that life is a journey. How many of you have heard that before? Life is a journey. Hopefully you've heard that because I believe, honestly, it to be really true. But you know the thing about journeys? Journeys have stops. Journeys have starts. Journeys have turns, detours. They have highways and back roads. And all these turning points, they can be, like I said, either good or bad. But we all have turning points in life. Every single one of us. And you know, it's crazy. Hopefully you guys can see this. But many of us, when we imagine our lives, we have this expectation that our life, if this is us, in this season of life, we're right here, we expect that life should just be like this. Woo, smooth sailing, no problems whatsoever. Come on, somebody. That's what my life should look like. The problem with this, though, is that when we expect this but don't get this, it wrecks us. Because no journey happens that way. And hear me clearly tonight, your life is not going to look like that. Because what it really looks like, I would say the first, few years while we're a toddler and we're growing up, things are pretty smooth, okay? And chaos could be happening all around us, but typically, because we're so little and naive to the things around us, everything just seems normal, even if it's chaotic, okay? So in our lives, from our view, things seem pretty normal, right? But the problem with that is you grow up a little bit, and you start to become aware of things, and you start to build your own faith, and you start to discover things and comprehend things more, and you start to get into friendships. And so we start out like this. And we make friends along the way, but then somewhere, at some point, our friends stop being our friends. And then we kind of get over that for a second. We start to, do pretty good. And we go, it's smooth sailing for a little bit. But then at some point, our parents may get a divorce. And then we don't know what to do. And then right after that, it's like God's not answering our prayers. I don't see where's God at. And then we kind of get through this season and we kind of coast through it, but we're kind of numb because it's been a rough season. We kind of go and we keep going. But then, like I said, we get injured. Don't want that to fall. Come on. And then somebody wrecks into our vehicle. Our boyfriend or our girlfriend breaks up with us. Do you see the point? Life is not straight, okay? Things drop when you least expect it, okay? It just happens. It just happens. And so what I don't want to do is set you up for failure and tell you that everything's just going to be all sweet and smooth, baby. Come on. It's not going to be that way. You're going to have turning points in your life. One of the best illustrations of turning points that change someone's faith comes from the life of Jesus. Okay, and John, one of his friends, wrote it down. I want to look at this. In John chapter 11, verse 1, it says this. Now a man named Lazarus, someone say Lazarus, was sick. He was sick, okay? He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. And so right away, we see three people. See three people. Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. Okay, and what you need to know about these three is these were not just three random people that Jesus just so happened to stumble upon and they were kind of like strangers, okay? These were three very close friends of Jesus. Very close friends of Jesus. And so after Lazarus got sick, Mary and Martha, they reached out to Jesus. And we find this in verse 3. It says this, the sisters sent word to Jesus. They sent a messenger to find Jesus, he was probably about 2 or 3, 4 days by travel on foot away. Okay, he wasn't just next door. Okay, he was quite a ways away. And their message said this, it said, Lord, the one you love is sick. I love the fact that Mary and Martha didn't even have to say Lazarus' name. They knew exactly that Jesus would automatically know who they were talking about. Mary and Martha knew that Jesus healed people, even strangers. And so their brother gets sick, Lazarus gets sick, and obviously, if Jesus is healing strangers, come on, surely he'll heal the one who he loves. And so Lazarus is sick with a life-threatening illness, and they call on Jesus to show up, but things did not go exactly how they thought it should. Not at all. And so Jesus didn't arrive at their house until a few days later. And by the time that Jesus shows up, Lazarus has died. He's dead. This was one of the very worst kind of turning points that you can imagine. And if you've lost anybody that you love, you can probably relate pretty heavily with Mary and Martha. They just lost their brother. This was not easy for them. And so we can imagine some of us how Mary and Martha are feeling in this moment when Jesus shows up at their house. Martha leaves her house and goes out to meet Jesus as he approaches. And we pick up in verse 21. It says this, Lord, Martha said, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. Will give you whatever you ask. And so imagine being in Martha's position here. She's angry. She's upset. She's sad. She's mourning. She doesn't know what to do. She's probably wondering, why the heck has it taken you so long, Jesus, to show up? But I love the fact that even after all of this, she still states her trust in who Jesus is. And I believe this is so important because that's exactly what turning points do for us. They get our attention. They get our attention. They force us to ask the question, what do we really think God is like? When things fall apart, when things don't go as planned, when things take a turn, what do I believe about God? It's so important. Martha, on the worst day of her life, in the worst pain she'd known, experienced Jesus being present with her. And Jesus responds by saying this in verse 23. He says this, Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." "Your brother will rise again," Martha answered. "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." But Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this?" Jesus says. And Martha responds in verse 27, "Yes, Lord," she replied. "I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world." Martha believed. She trusted in Jesus even though her brother died. Jesus didn't show up on time to save her brother, but her trust in Jesus was still very real. Very real. And John tells us that after this, one of the most famous verses in all the Bible, John 11:35, Jesus wept. Jesus wept. He cried. And it continues, it says, "Then the Jews said, 'See how he loved him.'" See how he loved him. In that moment, Jesus felt exactly what we feel when we mourn and we experience a loss. And what you need to understand tonight is that Jesus understands your pain. And that's the most, I don't know about you, but that's the most comforting thing. Like, it's great for people to talk to me and give me advice and all that, but if you understand what I'm actually going through, man, that's a whole nother level. And this is Jesus in this moment. Understand that Jesus, he understands and gets our pain. John telling us that Jesus wept is not just a fun detail. It shows us that it's a sign that we are never alone in our hurt. You are never alone in your hurt. As bad as things get, Jesus is in it with us. He experiences it alongside us. And what you need to know tonight, and write this down, please. When turning points get our attention, we will always find Jesus in the middle of it with us. When turning points get our attention, we will always, someone say always, find Jesus in the middle of it with us. At the hardest part of the story, when hope seems lost, he is there. And then Jesus, he does something crazy. He asks Mary and Martha to have their servants open up the tomb where Lazarus has been in for the last few days, dead. Okay? Y'all, it stinks in there. Okay? This was a very strange request. But the servants, they do it anyways. They do it anyways. And then we pick up in verse 41. It says this, "Then Jesus looked up and said, 'Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this for the benefit of those standing here, that they may believe that you sent me.' When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, 'Lazarus, come out.' The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, 'Take off the grave clothes and let him go.'" Incredible. Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead, and the story ends this way. I love this, verse 45. "Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him." It would be super easy for us to read this story and think that the whole point is the happy ending. Lazarus is back. Come on, somebody.
Amen.
Woo, amen. Come on. It can be easy to make that the focus point. And it would be tempting to think that maybe that's what Jesus will do in all of our turning points. But how many of you know that we have all experienced things? We've all gone through painful moments. We've all asked God to do something or answer our prayers, and we're still waiting. He still hasn't answered. We're still wondering, God, are you even there? And so what does that mean for our faith? What does this mean for our faith? When we're in this scenario where we're facing a turning point, we feel like God is distant, we have to remember what happened before the miracle. What happened? He wept. He was there, and he wept. Understand that this is the case for every single person within this room. Within your turning points, within your moments of pain, Jesus, he mourns with you. And I don't think it would be a far stretch to say that when you are overwhelmed by emotion and struggling with so much pain, heavy pain, I don't think that it would be a far stretch to say that while you're crying, he's crying too. Because Jesus would never ask us, God would never ask you to do something that he wouldn't first do. And the Bible calls us to mourn with those who mourn. To be in the pain with those who are experiencing pain. We understand that this is what Jesus does. He wept. He was with Mary and Martha in the pain alongside them before the miracle, before the resurrection, before anyone had any idea of a happy ending. Someone say he's in the middle. He was there on their worst day. And he was there when their worst day became their best day, when Lazarus was raised from the dead, and the same is true for us. No matter what kind of turning points you are facing tonight, or will ever face, Jesus is in it with you every single time. Our pain doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be a part of the story, but not the point. It can get our attention, but it doesn't have to destroy our faith. It can actually move us closer to God. Understand that it's possible to go through the toughest pain and come through it trusting God more. It's possible to go through the toughest pain and come through it trusting God more. Not because God made it go away, but because God used it to stretch you, to grow you, and make your faith feel more real and personal. And when that happens, people around us, not only us, but people around us, these people, these Jews that came over to Mary and Martha's house, they were not there for Jesus. They were there to mourn with Mary and Martha. But because they showed up, they were just around. And because of Mary and Martha's faith in who Jesus was, the people around began to believe. Understand that the truth is that you're going to hit turning points in your life. And we can't talk about faith, we can't talk about it without talking about this. There are going to be turning points in your life. And you've probably already hit a few, and you'll likely experience even more. And every time you do, you'll be tempted to turn away from God, to run from Him. But hear me clearly. When painful things happen, don't run from Him, run to Him. He's not the one caught. He's not making bad things happen in your life because He's upset with you or mad at you or because you deserve it. No, bad things happen because we lived in a screwed up world. Okay? That's just the reality. There's sin in our world today. And so bad things happen to us all. But when these things happen, when we face turning points, we have to ask two questions. And they're very simple, okay? Very, very simple. The first one is this: where is God in this? When you're faced with a turning point, when you're faced with a difficult situation, when things do not go the way you expected them to go, you have to ask the question: where is God in this? Because maybe it feels like nowhere, because things are difficult and they don't seem like they're getting better. But try looking closer, because maybe God is in the text message that your friend sends you out of the blue. Maybe God is in the encouragement of your coach or your small group leader. Maybe God is even in nature as you stop and you walk outside and you just breathe for a second. Look closer, because He's there. But the second thing is this: You have to ask the question, how can this tough situation help my faith grow? How can this tough situation help my faith grow? Understand that turning points, they don't last forever. They don't last forever. And when it's done, it's possible that you can look back and your faith in God be stronger than it ever was before. You can trust God more. You can be more confident than you ever were before. And when you do this, when you experience this, the next moment that you face a difficult situation doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but you'll be stronger. You'll be able to stand and not be shaken. You'll be able to last in the storms. When the storms come, like we talked about in week 1, when we build our faith on who Jesus really is, when we do what he says, it's like us building our faith on the rock that when the storm comes, our lives don't come crashing down either. We want our faith to grow. Even the hardest things can become things that cause growth. Because of this simple fact, if you get nothing else from tonight, is this. God can use turning points to grow our faith. Simply put, God can use turning points to grow our faith. And so we've talked about multiple things. We've talked about how faith is about doing, not just knowing. You can know all that Jesus says, but if you don't do what he says, your life won't change. We've also talked about how you can't do this alone, nor should you do it alone, meaning your life. You need to be surrounding yourself with people who are stronger than you, who believe in God just as much as you, if not more than you. Last week on Instagram Live, we talked about how in order for our faith to grow, that we have to step out in action and serve. We have to serve somebody else other than ourselves. If you don't do that, your faith is not going to grow. And your faith may never feel real until you experience what God can do through you. And then know that turning points are going to come. Turning points are going to come. And when they do, here's the question. Is your faith going to grow? Or is it going to be destroyed? The only hands that's in is yours. You choose. Whatever the situation is. God, even more than us, wants us to grow our faith. So that we can have a real relationship with him. And this growing your faith does not start and stop with this series. Hear me clearly. Real faith is everyday faith. And so we do these things every single day. Knowing that the God that we serve, he's good. The God that we trust in, he's good. The God that we believe in, he is good in every single situation, every season. Even when life gives us turning points. Let's pray.